the United States?
The U.S. President is Donald Trump.
Good evening, good afternoon, and good morning, all the beautiful people. I hope everyone, as always, is having a fantastic day. It is Wednesday, my dudes. We're back at it again. Today is the end of the month for January, last Wednesday of the month. Today is January 29th, 2025, and boy, oh boy, we're wondering if at this point in time, are we just waiting for this bull market to take off? It's the topic on everyone's minds. It's the big question. Is the 2025 Bitcoin bull or crypto bull run really going to happen? Or, of course, are we just hyping ourselves up? Maybe even setting ourselves up for another letdown? Because at this point in time, it seems like there's 10,000 tokens launching every single day. There's well over 10 million tokens out there, 35 million tokens, 50 million tokens. There are just an enormous amount of tokens out there. Of course, some people are saying they're the future of finance. Meme coins are the people who actually are the creators of the millionaires, right? We have the president talking about the same thing, or not necessarily the president, but David Sachs talking about meme coins could just be considered, that little collector item, right? Just like you would if you were a baseball card or a Pokemon card or something like that, where it almost kind of signals you being a part of something during that time frame as a collectible, right? And this is kind of what a lot of people are wondering, right? Are we just launching so many new tokens that we're spread liquidity so thin? But in my personal opinion, folks, I think we have to talk about, really just going back in history. First things first, looking back at the fact that the Bitcoin or the crypto bull run has in fact been this 4-year cycle. It's happened like clockwork. Crypto goes through the Bitcoin halving. We got that checked off in April of 2024. You start getting institutional adoption as well. We can check that off as well, because it's definitely happening with ETFs and everything that have been launched. Meme coins are still making millionaires overnight. This has been a thing really since 2021. That's whenever I started seeing meme coins become the main thing, where a lot of people were just making a whole bunch of money, and a whole bunch of money off meme coins, insane amount of money as well. But of course, typically, as you know, the people who actually get wealthy in crypto are typically the founders and the holders, right? Oftentimes you don't end up getting a situation where being a trader makes you significantly rich, okay? And so that's what a lot of people are kind of looking at, myself included, where it's like we've been going in this cycle for the last few years. What's really happening? What's going on, right? Because 2025 kind of feels different, y'all, right? And it's not just about Bitcoin or Ethereum. It's of course about the entire ecosystem expanding. But for like Ethereum, just do something, Ethereum, right? Like lagging behind like crazy at this point in time, especially Q1, which granted, we've only seen 1 month of 2025 so far, but typically Q1 of Ethereum versus Bitcoin, Ethereum typically outperforms Bitcoin. And when Ethereum starts pumping, it kind of leads the rest of the rally to also happen as well. And this time, each time Bitcoin has hit $100,000, Ethereum has actually gone lower and lower and lower and lower. And even today, Bitcoin's still sitting above this $100,000 threshold. Okay, sorry about that. Saw someone walking, got distracted. Squirrel. So, we were talking about the same thing where, Ethereum has just kind of been underperforming, right? Like now today, I mean, heck, let's just kind of take a quick little peeky weeky at the chart. I think Ethereum's sitting somewhere in the ballpark of like $3,000 once again. You know what I mean? So this is Bitcoin currently sitting at $101,000, holding pretty damn strong above this $100,000 level. You can see we've retested it a few different times. Now we actually broke down below the trend, so you can see which direction that it went. In fact, it went as low as 97,000 at that point in time. But Ethereum, guys, is still kind of lagging behind, right? Now, I've had this parallel channel drawn saying that we are on this downward parallel channel on the mass bullish scale of things. If you were to zoom out and actually just take a look for what it is, we are still on a nice bullish trend as well, right? Like just go back to, let's just say 2022, right? You can see we are on a nice bullish trend, as you can see just by this chart right here. So it is trending upwards, but definitely lagging behind, right? I mean, this thing is doing much worse than maybe even I would anticipate, in a lot of others as well. So as we are down in this bearish parallel channel right here, as long as we keep playing in this range, ideally it wants to support around this $3,000 range, and we can hold support at that level. Otherwise, we do start looking at previous lows like $2,700, and that's kind of that little same thing where we don't really want to start going and testing out some of these lower levels over here, because we can see based on the chart, we have a high right here, a low right here, a high right here, a lower low, a lower high, and essentially we're kind of starting to finally break into this. You know, could we start making higher lows finally, potentially retesting out some of these levels up here again, 3,500 and so on and so forth. But Ethereum's lagging, guys. I mean, guys, $3,000 on this one, pretty damn lackluster, if I do say so myself, on this one, right? So this is kind of what's leading some people to wonder, you know, what's actually going to happen, right? Is 2025 the bull run that we are expecting it to be? Are we, you know, just kind of like building ourselves up in this hype type stage right now, wondering kind of what's going on, what's happening, right? And of course, the elephant in the room is, with all the insane amount of new tokens being launched, it feels like every single time I refresh my Twitter feed, there's a new token promising to revolutionize the industry, right? And while I'm sure some of them could be legit, it's just so many things oftentimes that aren't even any utility, right? You can see how fast new crypto coins can get created. I mean, heck, you saw in 2024 that 13-year-old or 12-year-old kid launch a token, rug the token while on stream, flip everyone off saying thank you for the bandos, right? And then launch another token saying I'm sorry, I didn't mean to, and then rug that coin for another 20 bandos right there, and then launch a third token. I mean, he just literally created a token, rugged it, said sorry, rugged it, created another token, rugged it, and like, people buy, man. People are buying all of these tokens right now. I think there was a statistic talking on pump.fun, which is where most of the meme coins have been launched at this point in time, or at least that's where the mania is going. A lot of these things are just looking in a situation where I think it's over 99% of people don't even see a $10,000 profit. Don't even see a $10,000 profit, meaning you get into a token, the chances of you actually making any money on that token are damn near 1% or less just to get $10,000 in profit. And if you start diving deeper into that rabbit hole, it gets even slimmer, right? If you're talking about making $100,000, it was even lower percentage of people who have been in that category. But everyone wants to hit the, you know, play the lottery, see if they can be that particular person, think that they are different, and oftentimes you are just part of the pack. And so that's where it kind of leads me to believe this mindset of, are we in this 2025 bull run, or new tokens just distracting everyone's mindset right now? You know, looking back at the previous cycle history of everything happening, it just seems like, you know, this is more likely to happen than not, right? And this is coming from what has happened in the past, from 2013 all the way back over here, right? Looking back over here in 2013, so you can start seeing, you know, we started seeing a little pump start happening. The inauguration, January 25th or January 20th, you saw a little dip, followed by a massive rally up until March, right? And that was 2013. Same thing started happening in 2017. We saw the dip in January, followed by the massive rally up until March. We saw the same thing happen in 2021, where you actually get that dip that happened on January 27th of 2021. Followed by the massive rally leading up until, let's say, February or March in this little time frame over here. And then this is kind of where we're currently at down here, right here, y'all. So this is kind of what leads me to believe that we are still kind of pulling the same cycle right now. I know that's crazy to believe and even say out loud at this point in time, to think that there could be that possibility of, you know, we have just run into the same situation, same thing again. I do think the one major big difference is normally what happens is you see a rotation of crypto, right? And let me see if I can actually find a chart on that. I thought I had one pulled up. Give me 1 second. Let me see if I can find that over here. Where are you at? Over here. All right. I think this one will probably end up doing what I need it to do. Let me see if I can find a different one as well. All right, cool. I like this one here. So there we go. And just share that right there. All right. So normally what happens is you end up in a situation where you get what's called phase one, where basically a large amount of money moves in and flows into Bitcoin. Typically, people will begin to look at the Bitcoin dominance ratio and see that the Bitcoin dominance begins to fall. And when that does happen, oftentimes you end up getting into this phase two where you actually see Ethereum begin to outperform Bitcoin. This is where you start seeing money trickling into other large cap tokens, such as all the other layer one tokens out there as well. And yes, we've seen some pumps that have happened recently from Solana and, you know, XRP and all that good stuff as well, but we haven't seen the rally that typically happens, which oftentimes happens all at once. It's not just one-off tokens. It's not one-off scenarios. It's not one thing that brings it up. It's literally all of them begin to pump. And oftentimes when those large caps begin to pump, people will take their money from Ethereum and from Bitcoin and the profits, and they start throwing it into other assets as well, right? So if you've been in Bitcoin since 2022, for example, and you've seen a 2, 3, 4x pump during that time, you would oftentimes look to take some of those profits and flip them into Ethereum, and oftentimes flip them into large caps, and then you go into mid caps, and then really you get into what we call alt season, where everything just goes bananas, everything goes crazy, things start popping off like crazy. Literally everything starts outperforming Bitcoin and Ethereum. But a lot of times with institutional investors, they don't care about swapping their profits from Bitcoin. They're looking at holding this sucker for 20, 30, 40 years in some scenarios, right? And so like they don't want to flip their Bitcoin to Ethereum and then flip their Ethereum, flip their Ethereum into, yeah, let me just kind of see right here. Whoops. I'll go away real fast. There we go. All right, cool. I was just trying to get that little drawing thing. You can start seeing, where we go from Bitcoin right here, and oftentimes you go from Bitcoin, move it over, and you go into Ethereum. And oftentimes with these entities or ETFs, even they aren't really, moving their money. They don't plan on taking those profits, and I don't think it's a large amount of people who are holding these tokens at this point. I mean, granted, you got Michael Saylor holding like 400,000 Bitcoin or something pretty crazy on that one for these numbers. You got, the ETFs also holding some pretty large numbers as well. But this is kind of what's a little different this time around, right? We end up in a situation where now we aren't really moving the profits from the bigger tokens into the smaller tokens. And now that there are so many new tokens being launched every 3 seconds, oftentimes it just kind of says, I'd rather not do anything and not play around in any of that world, right? And we see like, is this time going to be different? So I had a stream with my Patreon people. By the way, if you want to join, do a weekly call every single week on Sunday, where you can go through all the previous items of what's happening in the RH ecosystem, how to take profit, when to get out of this market system, when to actually look to exit, whether it be liquidity providing, how to get any of this stuff done as well. If you would like to join, you're welcome to. It's link down below, patreon.com/ATXcrypto. But I was discussing this same concept of, there are so many tokens out there. What does it mean for the RH tokens in the RH ecosystem? And oftentimes this is, what's going on, man? Tapping in from Panama. That's awesome. Oftentimes this is kind of where you end up going. Yeah, exactly. My crypto Twitter feed is crying and dying about no pump in January. I've got all year. Let's go. Facts on facts, man. And this is where you start looking at, these certain situations where it's like, man, is this really happening? Is the 2025, bull run really going to happen? And we happen to be in a crazy situation in our ecosystem, for the RH ecosystem in particular, talking about We had the SEC case going out against it, when, by the way, the current crypto president and his cabinet is potentially looking at either dropping a lot of these SEC claims or charges against it, because it's basically happening right here, where the US SEC unveils a task force to start work on crypto regulations, and this could lead to them actually dropping some of their tokens, or some of the cases that are open right now. I know a lot of people are wondering what's going to happen with our case with Judge Amon. She's hasn't made her decision. Is it 60 to 90 business days? Is it 60 to 90 days from the case, which was October 31st? A lot of people are calling to see something happening by the end of January, and this is kind of leading to a little pump that happened over the weekend, and a good old sell-off once again because nothing happened. And so it's kind of funny, you hear the good old phrase 2 more weeks, and I think a lot of people are just tired of hearing that. It's been a little play on things that have been happening really since before the launch of Hex, which was over 5 years ago. And so we do happen to be in a very kind of precarious situation, right? I was looking at a chart, and this is kind of what led me to start thinking, like, I honestly thought we would probably end up in a situation probably like Sui, right? And I shared this with my Patreon people as well, and I thought we would be more so like the launch of Pulse Chain would be more so like this, where we see the launch of Sui, which happened roughly around the same time frame as Pulse Chain. Yes, it did have its sell off, and then yes, it did have a recovery, and coincidentally also happened to have a big sell off around this March timeframe, right? If you remember March 11th, which was known as the kill tweet date in my book, that was where you saw RH kind of send that kill tweet, but actually ended up sending not only our ecosystem down for Pulse Chain, PulseX, Hex, and those tokens, it actually ended up kind of, a lot of the tokens were all in that similar time frame around this March time frame, where they actually all kind of saw that same similar dip as well. This is that same time frame mid-March, and you actually got to see a little dip happen there, and that's Bitcoin. Ethereum got to experience their dip too. So what I was looking at was, I was thinking we would end up doing something like this, where you see a little pump, you see a little dump, and then you see a little pump on back, and this is where people would start getting hyped again, and so this is where some people who had invested in it saw roughly about that 10x, even 13x if you bought the bottom down here. But even if you happen to buy down here, maybe you didn't get in on the early stage, you still got to see a 10x, right? And I think a lot of people were expecting something like this to happen with Pulse Chain. I know myself was probably more so looking that would be a possibility. However, we not only got that March 11th kill tweet date, around this same time frame was when the SEC also came against us, and that was roughly in that July 31st time frame, right? So July 31st, when things finally started looking like they might recover, we ended up getting hit once again, kind of bringing us back down, whereas these tokens really started to rally. And then you ended up getting into the later cases of what's going to happen, what's really happening. October 31st is, are we going to court? Are we not going to court? Once again, a sell the news event, if you will, right? Kind of buy the rumor, sell the news. Oh shit, it's going to court, and we continued to dump. So like this happened for our ecosystem, and this is why I look at some of these things and kind of compare and say what was going on with their token, what was going on with our token around that time frame. And you can see, guys, how fast some of these recoveries or rallies can happen. Again, this is a 10x pump in the span of roughly about 155 days. So less than 5 months, or right around the 5-month time frame, would put us right back in that similar ballpark. And I can see something like this definitely happening in our ecosystem too, where we end up in a situation where we finally end up getting some sort of, closure, some sort of case dismissal, some sort of anything positive to really actually help start pumping and then actually start that rally. And the first real sign of us rallying would be, in my opinion, breaking back above the price where we actually saw the Interpol news, right? This is that Interpol FUD news right here, which, by the way, more people sold off on this news right here for the Interpol than they did for like the March, or than they did for the SEC case, which was wild to me at this point, especially how fast it happened. Maybe it's just because there's more people, maybe it's just because the market hasn't really done anything too crazy yet, but a lot of people sold off during this time and went and just dropped the price. Again, this is a daily chart right here, so this one daily chart right here was down 26%, and if you actually measure from candle to candle, you actually got to see roughly around 42%. So a pretty dang crazy drop on that one. And again, that was another little hit to our ecosystem, right? We started seeing that rally. Granted, a lot of the crypto space also got to see a dip around that mid-December timeframe, but we just got hit even harder. And this is what like every single time there tends to be some sort of like a small dip in the ecosystem or in the crypto space. There seems to be some additional FUD news that just happens to bring down, you know, our tokens over here. Now, granted, if you were buying the lows during this time, I mean, you are still up 57%. It's not anything crazy. I know it's not something like a 10x, 5x, or even, you know, 2x. And that's what I think a lot of people are kind of in the situation where they're just like, man, I've been waiting during this entire time. What's going to happen? What's going on? You know, do I just start looking at other tokens? And, you know, I shared this before as well, but this is when you start seeing, you know, a very small potential of this money being used. Now, again, I'm not saying it could be. Maybe there's another God whale that comes in, and maybe there's just someone else that steps in at this point in time. But we have seen these moments that can actually just absolutely skyrocket the price. And if we saw something like that happen, like say we do get a case dismissal, well, this would be kind of the way I would see it playing out. It would actually be shooting us all the way back up, potentially all the way back up, not only above SAC, but also roughly about 34% above SAC as well. And that would, from today's current prices, would be roughly around a 2 or 3x. It has happened this fast before in the past. We've seen a 2-3x pump in the span of 11 days. We've seen this on multiple times, as a matter of fact, right? This isn't like a one-off scenario that just happens to be the case. We've seen these moves happen. We are on a downward trend, and heck, I mean, even if I just kind of extend this out just a little bit further to the right, you can see we still are fighting that downward trend right now. We did break a little bit above it, started getting a little bit bullish on this one, and then this is where I think a lot of people were hyping up the narrative that we could hear something from the case, and obviously we didn't hear anything from the case, and that's a sell the news event for everyone looking. So we are starting to form, just to be on the more bullish side of things right here. Higher lows are getting formed on this one, which if it continues would be bullish. I would really want to start seeing higher highs. We got to see this high all the way up here and followed by a lower high. Not necessarily the most bullish in that scenario. So we're getting to form more like a pennant right now, where you can get in this situation and you got to decide which way the market's going to go. Is it going to break up? Is it going to break down? What's it really going to do, right? And we can just kind of form this little pennant right here, right? And this is kind of like a decision where something's going to happen and it's going to break one way or another. Now, obviously, if it breaks to the upside, really darn bullish. However, I really want to start seeing us back above these prices where it actually ended up being around this, you know, Interpol FUD news that happened. And again, I call it FUD because it's still fear, uncertainty, and doubt, and it scared a lot of people away, right? Even though, you know, Richard Hart being here or not being here literally has absolutely nothing to do with the price. We have seen this time and time again where a founder gets arrested and the price continues and the crypto continues and all is good and all is well. So that's what kind of shocked me whenever I saw people just lose their ever-loving mind on this news. And I think it's just because they're just like, man, they're tired, right? You know what I mean? Like they've been waiting and waiting and waiting, and now we're getting into the 3-year mark of, I mean, we had the sacrifice for Pulse Chain was July of 2021, right? You had the sacrifice for Pulse X in December of 2021, right? And so you're kind of past that 3-year point now at this point in time where you've either waited for the token to launch. Now that the token has launched, you just kind of like, I can continue DCAing. I can definitely continue DCAing. However, I'm just wanting something to happen, right? And this is where I think a lot of people are right now, right? And so if we just kind of draw, you know, these particular lines right here real fast, just to kind of give y'all that bullish, you know, pennant situation that I'm seeing kind of form right now. This is kind of what it's looking like. It's going to make a decision one way or another. We're going to figure out if we're going to break out above or break out below, but it really has to make a decision one way or another. Yes, I do like seeing higher lows. That is always good. However, I don't like seeing lower highs, right? And that just means that we don't really have that rally to continue that push forward, even though there has been several times where people are bridging in millions of dollars into the ecosystem because of the potential of the case getting dismissed. And if the case were to get dismissed, what it could potentially mean for the price, right? They want to be available, so they're sitting on the sideline right now saying, I will deploy capital if it gets dropped, for example. But if it doesn't get dropped, then I'm just going to continue sitting on the sideline, or I'm going to go play with other tokens in the meantime while things kind of sort itself out. This is kind of what's going on in the ecosystem right now. So sharing this information is just something I wanted to get ahead of everyone, because, excuse me, I got distracted. If history has taught us anything, it's that crypto is full of surprises, guys. Like, literally, it's full of surprises. It can go up, it can go down, it can fly like absolute madness and craziness out of nowhere, whether it be good news, bad news, or just anything really happening. So the key is actually being informed, staying cautious, and obviously maybe keeping a little cash on the sideline for when the market inevitably dips. Because, guys, we know there's going to be 30, 40, even 60% dips that happen on a bull run. And this time is kind of showing that we are still in that same situation right now. Things aren't really different, right? The one thing that is going positive right now is the dollar is on track for the worst week since 2023. So if you're looking at the DXY, for example, and you're checking that particular index out, the one thing about the DXY is, we perform well when the dollar does worse. Okay, so really ever since mid of January of 2025, I mean, we have seen the dollar begin to dip. Now it has started to regain some of its losses over really that last week, but really we want to get back in here. If you remember, when we were really darn bullish, it was also in this November timeframe leading up into that December timeframe, and guess what? Conveniently or coincidentally, around that mid-December is when the rest of the market kind of stopped its pump right here, and that's when the dollar started regaining a lot of its power again. This is kind of similar to the Bitcoin dominance. These are charts to be paying attention to when looking at what's going to happen in the overall market. Right now, the Bitcoin dominance is still on a strong uptrend right now. It's been progressing higher and higher and higher, and this is actually a trend line that I had drawn out really since, again, 2022 all the way back over here. We actually did in fact break below it, and if you happen to pay attention when this time frame was, when we were actually dipping down, it was November. We were seeing massive rallies that did happen in the November time frame, followed by even a little bit of a pump happening early January as well. And that was again when the Bitcoin dominance was showing a little bit of weakness, finally losing some of the ground. However, in recent times, the Bitcoin dominance is regaining some ground again. Ideally, we don't want it really back above 60%. That was kind of one of those levels that we wanted to break through. We retested a couple of times, and we finally broke through. And that was where the Bitcoin market, or where the altcoin market really started to actually take off, right? We saw it in November. If you look at any of the tokens that were there around that time frame of what was going on, which again happened to be around this dollar weakening time frame, which also happened to be coincided with the Bitcoin index going down. And then you can actually see kind of what happened in our ecosystem for that November time frame. Again, this is in November of kind of what the rally actually looked like for the Pulse chain ecosystem right here, right? So if I'm just kind of measuring it from like how it actually went, this is a good almost 3x or 2x in 33 days during that entire month of November, which also was when the Bitcoin dominance was losing ground. So ideally, this would be where I'm going to be focusing on, is just saying, hey, when Bitcoin dominance begins to lose its traction, I can see a lot of people begin to start throwing in some more capital. So I'd want to see this number start coming back down, ideally even coming back and retesting out the 55 level. That would be kind of where the beginnings of alt season really happen. Again, it doesn't mean it has to happen that way, but if you just go back and look at what happened in previous cycles, the alt season really started kicking off like crazy around this 2021 timeframe, around March, April, May, right? Somewhere in this time frame over here, where it began to drop, Bitcoin dominance began to falter, and then everything else just really rallied all the way up until really one of the cycle top peaks, which is roughly about May of 2021. So the alt season, it may end up being faster than we expect, meaning we could see a massive rip all the way, for example, of a token, going down and doing something absolutely crazy and doing a 10x in the span of, I don't know, we'll say 3 days, for example, right? Which can blow everybody's mind, and that can continue happening. We can see 100x in maybe even 100 days. And I know this sounds wild to say, y'all. I understand it. And maybe that could just be the crazy rally that happens right before that first cycle market peak. I think we end up doing something very similar to the 2021 cycle, pulling this chart up once again. I think we end up going back in this situation where we see the first cycle peak happen around the January or March timeframe, potentially even May timeframe, followed by a sell-off in the summer, followed by the rally that happens once again, leading us into the higher highs and higher lows, bringing us into the world of this time we're going to end up hitting roughly about 135,000. That's kind of what I have marked right here going into that first rally, right? And so this is kind of what I can see happening. We begin to rally, and during this rally, ideally, we see Bitcoin dominance fall, because I want Bitcoin price to still rise. This is very bullish for the crypto ecosystem still. So if we can get Bitcoin to start being around this time frame, 135,000 by March, and at the same time, Bitcoin dominance actually falling during that time as well. So it going down here, this is actually a very bullish move to actually see it play out. Now, this is when I think we're going to hit that first cycle peak, would be in this March-May timeframe, somewhere around these numbers, somewhere over here. And then we're going to see a little dip, possibly even coming back, retesting out 100,000 once again. Again, that would not be unexpected, followed by the final rally into the end of the year, bringing us into that $242,000 Bitcoin all the way up. And again, I had this, in July right here, but if you were to actually kick it all the way out, it would probably be something like over here, where we actually start breaking over those highs. We kind of get through the summer months over here. We start kind of rallying in that August, September timeframe like we did in 2024. And we saw that really happen. We saw it begin in 2022. We saw a rally happen in 2023 in September. And then we also have seen a rally in September in 2024 as well. So it looks like we're kind of going to continue up until roughly about September, finally getting that final rally into the end of the year, that final hoorah, that final push. During this time is when you're going to see the Bitcoin dominance, for example, go something in the ballpark of, going down and retesting out that 40% range. Okay. And so this is kind of like showing what could potentially be happening, where we see the Bitcoin dominance begin to rally once again, up until roughly about that September timeframe, followed by that massive dip all the way up until that November, October, somewhere in this range, where we see the Bitcoin dominance drop down to not only 45%, but potentially even 40%, which has marked the low and the actual cycle top every single time so far in previous cycles, right? If I go back and look at all the other previous cycles on this one, let me just throw this on a 1 week time frame real fast so you can just kind of see it a little bit easier. Every single time we've hit the actual top of the market, it's been roughly in this time frame, right about 40% dominance, 40% dominance. And where do I think we're going to fall this time? Roughly around the same ballpark. Okay, so this is why I don't think that the cycle's really in at this point in time. I think the 2025 Bitcoin bull, or the bull run, is really just kind of beginning. We're going to obviously have to wait and see how it all plays out. We're going to have to wait and see what actually ends up happening. But guys, what do you think, right? I want to know what your thoughts are on this as well, because I want to know, is 2025 going to be the Bitcoin or the biggest crypto bull run that we've ever seen yet? We have a very pro crypto presidential cabinet, Senate, and House of Representatives in office. We have the ability to start passing rules and regulations to actually allow a lot more clarity so there can be less FUD happening. Or are we setting ourselves up for possibly a massive disappointment, right? I do want to know your thoughts down in the comments below. Don't forget to rush to smash the like button, subscribe, and hit the bell notification so you don't miss out on the next time we go live and we do a deep dive into crypto. Keep continuing to buy is my suggestion. You do whatever you want to do at the end of the day. Hopefully your portfolio may stay green forever. I want everyone to have an absolute wonderful time and a wonderful week as well. I will catch every single one of y'all in my next video. See y'all.
It is Wednesday, my dudes. Wednesday. Wednesday, my dudes.
I wanna be the best in the game, invest in my name. Check no restraints, I'm obsessed with the pain. I ingest, I retain, assess and I change. Possessed by the thought I'll be free one day from society's restraints. Money, clout and fame, mud, disease, a plague. We all love to hate, have to play the game, have to make a name. All our insecurities are on display.